Also, plant people, animal people, water people, air people, rock people, all my relations, all my relations.
He calls himself a sacred earth activist. Jim Embry, our good friend, strives to connect people to their relationship with the earth and desires communities to think and act not just out of the box, but out of the barn. A conversation with the founder and director of the Sustainable Communities Network, Jim Embry, now on Connections. He calls himself a sacred earth activist. Jim Embry, our good friend, strives to connect people to their relationship with the earth and desires communities to think and act not just out of the box, but out of the barn. A conversation with the founder and director of the Sustainable Communities Network, Jim Embry, now on Connections. Welcome to Connections today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Renee Shaw. Earth nurturer Jim Embry, founder and director of the Sustainable Communities Network, has spent a lifetime helping Central Kentucky and the world, really, gain appreciation for our roots. From the ground up, Jim has built a network of activism centered around agriculture, history, and social justice. His work has earned him international acclaim, and most recently, he learned of a prestigious honor by the culinary nonprofit organization, the James Beard Foundation, whose mission is to celebrate, support, and elevate the people behind America's food culture and champion a standard of good food. It's good to have our good friend Jim Embry with us to talk about this outstanding recognition and what else he's cooking up. Good to see you, Jim.
Wonderful. Great to be here again with the KET family.
Yeah.
You know, all the staff and all the audience members all around the state and all around the region, actually.
Sure. Well, every time you come on, we get lots of feedback about you, even from other stations that have carried the interviews elsewhere, and not just in the South, but other places. And first, I have to say congratulations for being bearded.
Yes.
James Beard,
Yes.
we know like people like Weta Michael. We have Sam Four, who has a Sri Lankan restaurant in Lexington. There was a gentleman who was a chef in Woodford County who was nominated, but you are a finalist in the leadership category for this prestigious culinary outfit that really is devoted to sustainability and making sure that there's good food.
Yes.
How did you even get into this, and how did they know you?
Well, you know, Renee, first of all, I want to thank you all, you in particular. I've been on your show, I think, 3 or 4 times, okay? And you've already been a believer in what I do, great supporter. So I just want to thank you all, you and the KT family. Matter of fact, I have here, a video, I think from 2008, okay? Okay. Might have been the first show we did.
Yeah.
And then you ask, well, how did this whole thing come into being? Of course, I call myself an agrarian intellectual activist in the tradition of my family, who came to Kentucky in the year 1800 in an enslaved condition, okay? But they honored the land, they learned the flora and the fauna, learned to love the land, and they began this tradition of folks who were agrarian, yes, intellectual, college graduates, but also activists. So my work is following that tradition. Well, when James Beard, said, hey, you've been nominated, and you're in the ring, okay? Your hat's in the ring, and tell us about yourself. I said, well, how much time do you got? Okay. And so you know how that works. You get nominated, and then they ask you to send more information.
Right.
And Renee, I sent them a bunch of stuff, but what I sent them were the links
Oh,
to
cool.
the KET interviews, and also the one with, remember Dave Shuffett?
Yes,
With
Kentucky Life back
yeah,
then.
right, Kentucky Life. And so, if someone's to blame for me getting the award, okay, it's you.
Well, I'll gladly take it. One of the things that I can say I got right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also what happened, you know, as you know, from being in the TV media, so the James Beard Awards, they're like the Oscars of the food and restaurant business, okay? Like the Oscars. Prestigious, you know, awards with all the big time chefs and whatever. So what happened, 4 or 5 years ago, they were criticized righteously because these awards they were giving out were largely absent from people of color, okay? And we've been playing a role in food and ag our whole lives, okay? So they decided to commit to being more inclusive, okay? And to not only create a judging panel, but included people of color, especially African Americans,
Right.
as well as categories that were more broadly represented. They opened up this leadership award, okay, recognizing people maybe who weren't necessarily a chef or a restaurant,
Right.
owner, but they were deeply committed and deeply embedded in the food and agricultural system.
Yeah. And one of the things that you said that they really liked was last year in your Joy and Justice journey in June, you drove across country for 35 days, 6,000 miles, visited 25 cities, 15 states, 12 food cooperatives, 13 plus urban and rural farms, 12 state and federal parks, 20 family members, spoke at 3 universities and 15 slow food chapters, and gave out 500 packages of Ujama
Yes.
seeds.
Yes, absolutely.
So the
yeah.
activism, I mean, you've always been doing this kind of work, but I do want you to talk to us about why so much effort in doing that particular exercise last June.
I will. You know, as you know, I grew up in the civil rights movement. I was 10 years old, a member of CORE. My mother was the president. And she thought, I want my sons out here with me on the picket lines, weigh-ins, and whatever else. I began at 10 years old. And during those years, we were always visiting each other. People would come from the north on the way south for the Freedom Ride, stop by our house. Like James Farmer would come by our house and eat cornbread, and beans on the way south. So that whole idea of people visiting each other was a strength in the civil rights movement. So part of my thinking on the head I wear of slow food, let's create these slow food ambassadors like me, and then we would travel to the various slow food chapters. So then we had I wrote, like the manifesto, what's called the EIJ, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Manifesto for Slow Food. And we had this campaign called Joy and Justice, okay? And I thought, wow, I haven't been out west where I want to, traveling a whole lot. Let me just commit next summer to traveling for a whole month, out west, and I wear different hats. One was the Good Foods Co-op hat. One was a slow food hat. One was this whole question of food justice organizations hat. One was the Ujama seeds hat, and so forth. I visited all these different locations, just spreading, the thought of justice, but a joy along with that. Because, and part of the reason why, in my view, when it comes to climate change and all the different pandemics that overlap, we can't spend hundreds of more years trying to figure this stuff out, okay? We have to network with people, engage with people, encourage people to be more involved, not only in the justice work around social justice, also what we call environmental justice, and how we began to regard the earth as this sacred planet. So I began doing that last summer. I'm gonna go again this summer. So again, when the James Beard folk asked, told us what you've been doing, I said, well, okay. I said, well, so last summer, I had a bunch of videos from my talks at University of California, up in Minneapolis. I went to George Floyd Square, for example, and I planted 2 flowers in that sacred place. One was a flower for George Floyd, and one was a flower for Breonna Taylor, trying to connect their spirits there. So I sent them a bunch of videos. I had done a bunch of op-eds around Juneteenth and radio interviews. I sent them all that. And they said, wow, we're just tired of looking at all the things you did, okay? How could you do all that and still return home full of energy.
Yeah.
It was a great journey about joy and justice.
Yeah, and the intersectionality between environmental justice, appreciation for literally our roots, along with all of these other issues that we're dealing with, whether it's a pandemic or it's the racial injustice pandemic.
Also, part of that James Beard, award, and probably their considerations, and what I sent them, was this thought that in our country, the foundational contradiction of our country is around stolen land from indigenous people, stolen labor from African people to do what? To do agriculture, okay? To do food and agriculture is the foundation of our country's injustice. I'm also aware, 15,000 years ago, okay, women gifted us with agriculture. But with agriculture, however, the women sometimes are most exploited, underpaid, harassed, exploited, whatever. So not only is then food and ag the point of foundational injustice, it's also the fulcrum point of transforming our society. If we can transform those initial contradictions in food and ag, then we can then also begin to transform all of our institutions and the entire society. That's my premise. And when I was on a panel with Al Gore a couple of years ago around Climate Underground, I mentioned that contradiction. He says, wow. He says, now I see why you're so passionate about food and ag, because it's a fulcrum for transformation. I said, absolutely.
Right. And it's interesting if ag commissioners and those who were in those positions would also adopt that same kind of frame of mind. I do want to talk about, you said a term, slow food movement. I want you to define that, but also the seed movement. So start with slow food first.
Well, slow food is what humans had been doing for 15,000 years as we developed food and agriculture, okay? And also within our own families. I live on a farm now, that's a family farm that goes back to 1890 in our family, okay? And when my aunt knew I was going to Italy for the first Terra March in 2008, she says, well, Jimmy, why are you going to Italy? I said, what's about slow food? She said, what's slow food? That's what y'all been doing your whole life, okay? That's what slow food is, which means taking care of the family and the property, loving the earth, loving each other, growing food locally, okay? Growing good food, healthy food, and just being engaged in these smaller scale communities. So Slow Food began as an organization in the 1980s in Italy as they were trying to resist McDonald's moving into Italy, and they couldn't prevent it because of all the different trade agreements. They thought, well, if we're against fast food, then what are we for? We're for slow food. And their birthed the organization called Slow Food, been around since the 80s, and now we have what you would call national associations in about every country in the world, okay? And many of the, matter of fact, if you look at the James Beard Award categories, they list slow food as part of the award categories, because they recognize how important that whole theme is. It's about food that is, we call good, clean, and fair. And I joined up in 2008 as an organization, but you know, I helped found Good Foods Co-op in 1972, and we're already devoted to local food, organic food, healthy food, and have been since '72. So it's kind of like slow food, and again, we're an international network. And matter of fact, just quickly want to mention that this past summer, the face we've had of Slow Food has been the founder, a guy named Carlo Petrini, who's an Italian. But just last year, we elected a guy from Uganda named Eddie McKeeby as now the president of Slow Food International.
Interesting.
A young guy, 35 years old, you know, Ugandan farmer, you know, intellectual, is a new face. That's saying, hey, we recognize that the future lies in the hands of young people. The future also lies more in the global south than global north. And the future also lies in how well Africa arises into like more like a world leader in terms of modeling. That's Slow Food. On the seed end of it, of course, we have in Slow Food, it's called the Ark of Taste, the collection of seeds globally, okay, and trying to preserve and protect and create greater biodiversity. But 2 years ago, during the COVID epidemic, people got into gardening. But what happened, you got online trying to find seeds and you couldn't, because they were all sold out. Well, many of us who've been involved in the movement said, wow. They said, well, if we know that white folk can't find seeds, then we know black folk can't find seeds even worse. So we formed this Ujamaa Cooperative Farming Alliance in response to COVID and lack of seeds. It's been around 2 years, like newbies. So now our work is to create this network across the world, actually right now, of people who are seed farmers, seed savers, and we're trying to get people to become seed farmers where you're not just growing to eat collard greens, but you're growing to harvest the seeds. We have different projects, like one, we have what's called the Heirloom Collard Project, where we invite, like you and all the KET listeners, join in the Heirloom Collard Project, which means grow out collards. We'll send you the seeds, grow out collards, but we have, Renee, 30 varieties of collards in our collection.
Oh, wow.
We also have what's called the Ultra Cross Okra Project, and we have in our collection, this friend of ours named Chris Smith in Asheville, we have 200 kinds of okra. So we're a believer in terms of climate change resilience. We have to create a greater biodiversity in what we're growing and saving at the bioregional level.
But how do you do that on a mass scale? Is that harder to achieve on a mass scale?
Well, it's going to take some work, but of course, as you know, there are people who are already doing similar work. We've got some friends of ours, for example. Again, we have what's called an African Caribbean network. We've got friends in the Caribbean. We've got friends in Africa. There's a friend of ours over there named Daniel Njama, who's in Kenya, and he's been doing this for about 12 years. And they've got 80,000 people in their Seed Savers Network, 80,000 people. So yes, I mean, it's going to be, so part of going out west this summer, I will be focused on this idea of creating these, we call seed commons in the different bioregions, of getting people, again, who are already doing great work, got gardens, farms, whatever else, to think about growing out for seeds, share those, and we'll be creating, we have a big international seed vault up in, I think it's Norway, way up the North Pole, which is where all kinds of seeds are being stored. And we say we have to also create these seed vaults and seed cleaning warehouses in different bioregions. So our Ujamaa, say, 5-year vision is to have 50 seed commons hubs across the country.
Wow.
So part of my work in going west this summer is to help create that. We already have commitments from folk, like again, I mentioned Al Gore's farm, Caney Fork Farms in the Nashville area, Minneapolis, the DC area, and Kentucky has been identified because I'm here, Embry College is here. So Kentucky, this region, will be also a seed hub for our Ujamaa collective.
Right. And so how does this get at the issue of food insecurity? Because we know that and even health disparities going greater
yeah, absolutely.
into that.
Again, the foundation of food security and food sovereignty are seeds. If you don't have seeds, you can't have food security. But also, we have already networks of all kind of wonderful work being done at colleges, HBCUs, land-grant colleges, around trying to get better quality food in our communities, access, trying to honor people of color traditions around food. This is already there in a good kind of a way. And we're just saying, let's add this seed component to where you're growing great food to deal with questions of, apartheid in our neighborhood, and come food deserts, food apartheid, addresses those, but it also gives us greater resilience, around for climate change, because we're securing seeds for our local regions. So for us, it's just part of an extension of the good work already being done.
Yeah.
you know.
Is Black Soil involved in this? And this is Ashley Smith.
I mean, you know, Sister Ashley, you know, we love her so much. Okay?
Right, yeah. I just got some sweet potatoes from her not too long ago.
Yeah, and matter of fact, I mentioned, you know, we're bringing in the James Beard folks. They're coming in to interview, to film my work here in Lexington on the 14th. And I hope you can be part of that. I've already called, you know, our beloved Ashley. She says, yeah, she called me Elder Embry. You know, I'm going to be there. So she's involved as well. And, you know, just a real quick example. I was down last fall with our Ujamaa team. We attended what's called the Federation of Southern Cooperatives annual meeting and workshops. And they've been around, as you know, serving Black farmers in the South for 55 years, doing great work, okay? And we approached them about coming on board and joining our Ujamaa collective around seeds. I said, well, have you ever thought about having your own seed company? They said, no, we never have. You ever thought about, you grow these wonderful, delicious watermelons, but about saving the watermelon seeds to share with your farmers and the rest of the country? I said, no, we sure haven't. I said, but wow, what you're saying, it said it's a game changer.
Right.
You come here next year, and we're going to have, okay, some seeds, okay, available at our annual meeting. So, so we're just saying that, you know, seeds and what's called trees that produce flowers and seeds have been around 200 million years, okay? So when you look at a seed, you're looking at 200 million years of history and wisdom, only because the earth had produced this magnificent biodiversity that humans came along 2 or 3 million years ago, okay? And what we're taught by indigenous people, that these seeds are our family. As you recall, the idea of 3 sisters, okay? The folks say, they're not just corn, it's not just squash and beans, they're 3 sisters. Up north, where the folks harvest wild rice, they call the rice their grandmother. So what we're saying is that it gives humans a chance to reclaim our sanity, okay, about the sacredness of food, soil, agriculture, and so forth. So our work is about not just providing seeds for people, this great diversity, but helping to transform these injustices.
Right. When we think about great farmers and agricultural experts and heroines like Ashley Smith,
Yes.
Black Soil,
Yes.
you know, how are you grooming and nurturing a new generation of agritextual intellectual activists?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know, I've been working with young people my whole life, okay? I was grateful that my parents pulled me, okay, into the civil rights movement. So I'm aware of how important it is for intergenerational dialogue and intergenerational movement building. As you know, years ago, I began here in Lexington Youth Green Corps, and we were engaging young people in all kinds of ways. And part of our engagement is what's now the Art Garden, named for Isaac Murphy.
Right.
And that was all about providing young people a chance to come into the East End, create a garden, grow stuff, and take it to their neighbors where they can gain a sense of responsibility, a sense of mission. But we have, again, we're having here in late April, around my birthday weekend, what we call this Ujamaa Spring Convening. People are coming in from as far away as California, Vermont, Detroit, Minneapolis, all around the South, who are coming in for these 4 days all around this question of seeds and seed commons. And half the folk are young people. Okay,
Interesting.
that are part of our network.
Right.
We've got a sister named Amira Mitchell in Virginia. She has a small seed company, I think it's called Black Seeds, or I forget the exact name, okay? But she's about 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
Okay? So, but again, we recognize how important it is to engage young people. I'm going to be up in Minneapolis for 4 days around Juneteenth. Speaking and whatever, and we were already working on a program on that Saturday to engage about 100 young people, okay, at a garden setting, and I'll be speaking about the importance of seeds and justice. Then we'll be planting some things, okay, with those some 100 young people.
Wow.
And I spoke last year, University of California, Santa Cruz, to these college students who were in their agroecology program. It's about 60 of them. Okay, so yeah, so we're deeply committed and deeply arranging to involve young people in every way.
Yeah, and even if they don't have necessarily desires to have that as a vocation, just getting them interested for their own family and community sustainability.
Yes, because, you know, Renee, it's kind of funny that everybody eats. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody eats. We're all involved in the food movement.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, our beloved Wendell Berry says, one of his quotes, he says, eating is an agricultural act. Mm-hmm. So we're saying we should all be aware of what the impact is with the climate change on food production. Part of our work, Renee, is also working with universities, research, and all our own work is researching seed adaptation to climate change. Agricultural zones are already changing. What we're growing here in Kentucky now, 10 years from now, may not be able to be grown here. Mm-hmm. So we're actively involved in researching adaptation, and that's done largely, okay, by younger college students, mm-hmm. Okay. Again, we're bringing here in April for our spring convening young folks and faculty from Spelman, Tuskegee, Harvard, Clemson, Princeton, whatever, okay, coming in here with these young people to make sure that we're having these intergenerational dialogues to engage young people. And so we just think that this whole, again, intersect of food and ag
right.
is pivotal for everybody because it allows us to begin to resolve these foundational contradictions, but it also allows us to engage with everybody in this work that can be transformative.
Yeah. Well, we're so proud of you, Jim, and we love your passion and your commitment. It's not just errant passion, but it's passion that is deep-rooted,
yes.
For a bad pun there. And we are so proud of you, and we'll be looking in June for you to bring home that James Beard Award for Leadership.
I will.
You can count on it. He will do it. Thank you so much for joining us today for this great conversation. There are previous shows where Mr. Embry, Elder Embry, has been on with us, and you can find those online at ket.org/connections. Listen to our podcast also. They're there as well when you're driving in on your commute. And then make sure you tune in each weeknight at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central for Kentucky Edition, where we inform, connect, and inspire. Thank you for joining us. Until I see you again, take really good care.